and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas is on the widespread unrest in Bangladesh following the killing of a youth leader. We're telling you about the situation on the ground with the country on the boil all over again. Where are things headed? This is coming up in just a bit. Also on the show for you tonight, we're getting you the latest on the Russia-Ukraine war. A lot happening on the battlefield as Russia strikes multiple targets in Ukraine. Farmers expressing their anger in Brussels. We are telling you about that trade deal that has left them furious, to say the least. All this and more coming up. Just over 16 months after student-led protests forced the former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina into exile, the streets of Bangladesh once again burning. This is what the situation looks like. Thousands of protesters have returned to the streets of Dhaka following the killing of a popular youth leader. A student leader who had risen to prominence during the 2024 protests, and what started out as anger over his death has quickly transformed into widespread unrest, vandalism and arson across different parts of the country, sparking concerns of fresh unrest ahead of the national elections. And that violence spiraled into selective targeting. First, the mob went after the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Protesters reportedly ransacked and damaged the already partially demolished house of Bangladesh's founding leader. It was his daughter, Sheikh Hasina, remember, who was ousted as the country's prime minister after widespread anger last year. Their family house, which has repeatedly come under attack, was attacked again last night, and it is being reported that the mob tried to pull down what remained of that structure and set fire to the posters of the former prime minister. Since her ouster, protesters have repeatedly attacked her party and its offices, and this happened again last night. In Rajshahi, bulldozers were reportedly used to demolish an Awami League party office. In Chittagong, a former minister's residence came under attack. Protesters also blocked a major highway linking the capital and even targeted a cultural institution in Dhaka central to Bengali identity. Next, the mob attacked the media houses. In Dhaka, mobs torched buildings, including offices housing two of Bangladesh's most prominent newspapers. Protesters first attacked the offices of Prothom Alo newspaper, vandalizing the premises before setting it on fire around midnight. And they then targeted the offices of Daily Star newspaper, destroying its lower floors. and setting it on fire. The target list also included the Indian government office. Hundreds surrounded the residence of India's Deputy High Commissioner in Dhaka, leading the police to fire tear gas to prevent the situation from escalating further. These are not isolated incidents. They are basically pointing to a complete breakdown of law and order. Take a look. And the thing is, Bangladesh's interim government has urged the people on Friday to resist violence as police and paramilitary troops fanned out across Dhaka. Police and paramilitary troops fanned out across the capital and other parts. Now, interestingly, just a day earlier, the European ambassador to Bangladesh, in the context of the upcoming elections in Bangladesh, had said that journalists need to feel secure from harassment and confident that arrests are subject to due process and judicial oversight. Back in August 2024, when Mohammad Yunus arrived at the Dhaka airport before taking charge of the interim government there, he spoke of calm, he spoke of stability, rebuilding a fractured country. Here's what he said.
You put your trust in me. You and the students called me, and I responded to this call. My appeal to the people is, if you have trust in me, if you rely on me, then make sure there will be no attacks against anyone, anywhere in the country.
That was back then, and 16 months on, Yunus's promise lying in ruins. The images coming out of Bangladesh today showing a government that has failed to impose order. It has lost control of the streets. The interim government has issued statements after statements condemning the mob violence, urging restraint, calling this a critical moment with the election scheduled for the month of February. But what next? Bangladesh Nationalist Party acting chairperson, in fact, has said they are watching the developments with grave concern. And he called out what he called criminal groups for carrying out planned killings and injuries across the country, calling the bloodshed part of a broader blueprint. Sharif Osman Hadi, who was injured in that assassination attempt last week, died in a Singapore hospital after days on life support. He played a crucial role in the 2024 student-led protests. He was preparing to enter mainstream politics and was expected to contest the upcoming elections as well. Masked gunmen shot him in the head on the 12th of December as he left a mosque during campaigning in Dhaka. The police have now launched a manhunt, released photographs of the suspects, and also announced a cash reward. Bangladesh's Chief Justice, meanwhile, who is due to retire next week, has said that the protests last year did not aim to overturn the constitution, rather to renew and strengthen the country's engagement with it. But then 16 months on, Bangladesh stands exactly where it stood last August in a way. There is anger on the streets. The country is unstable, to say the least. It continues to be trapped in that cycle of violence with no clear exit in sight. Shifting focus, Volodymyr Zelensky pleading for money to stop Putin as Russia strikes 100 targets in Ukraine. On Thursday, Russia said its armed forces had struck over 100 targets in Ukraine, while Ukraine reported on the same day that it had repelled offensives from Russia. Let's just break this down. A lot happening on the battlefield. In fact, the Russian Ministry of Defense has said in its latest report that over the past 24 hours, its forces had conducted strikes on 149 areas, including energy infrastructure serving the Ukrainian forces, assembly workshops, storage points for long-range attack drones, and temporary deployment sites of Ukraine's armed forces and foreign mercenaries. And they also destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicles, they said, field artillery, ammunition depots, according to them. The Russian air defense system saying that they shot down 216 fixed-wing drones belonging to Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian army reporting that its troops engaged in 134 combat clashes with Russian forces in just the past 24 hours. They repelled dozens of Russian attacks, they say, in areas like Pokrovsk. Their air missile artillery units struck one Russian air warehouse, one control point, two major targets, shot down 330 Russian tactical drones. In another development, meanwhile, the Ukrainian president has said on Thursday that a Ukrainian delegation is on its way to the United States to continue the peace negotiations. The talks with America negotiating team, remember, set to take place, in fact, with European representatives also expected to participate, Zelensky told the Interfax Ukraine news agency. And he highlighted that the key points of contentions between Ukraine and the United States include territorial issues and the use of frozen Russian assets. Zelensky has said that should a peace agreement be reached in the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine plans to use the frozen assets for reconstruction efforts. However, if the hostilities persist, the funds may be directed towards supporting the Ukrainian military, also bolstering the defense production and purchasing US-made air defense missiles. Zelensky has urged the EU leaders to approve a loan to keep Ukraine afloat in the new year. At a high-stakes EU summit in Brussels, leaders deciding whether to actually use the frozen Russian assets to underwrite a loan for Ukraine's needs over the next 2 years. Belgium, fearing a Russian backlash and preferring to borrow from international markets, and insisted on Thursday that its European Union partners must provide ironclad guarantees that it will be protected from Russian retaliation. And speaking at a press conference in Brussels, Zelensky said that if Ukraine does not get this batch, the drone production will be decreased several-fold. The bulk of the assets, some 193 billion euros, that's $227 billion, as of the month of September, are held in the Brussels-based financial clearing house Euroclear. Russia's central bank sued Euroclear last week. And Zelensky is hoping that the United States would exert more pressure on Vladimir Putin. He said, and I'm quoting now from his statement, "I think that Putin does not want to stop this war, but he can if the United States will pressure more. And President Trump, he can," quote unquote. Meanwhile, European Union leaders have agreed on a major financial move to keep Ukraine afloat in that war against Russia. After intense negotiations, the EU decided to borrow 90 billion euros and loan it to Ukraine over the next 2 years, rather than directly using frozen Russian state assets. Listen to this.
In October, we decided that the European Union would cover Ukraine's pressing financial needs for 2026 and 2027. Last week, we decided that Russia would not get its assets back until Moscow ends its aggression. Today, we approved a decision to provide 90 billion euros to Ukraine for the next 2 years.
Basically, the plan marks a political compromise. While the EU has more than 210 billion euros in Russian assets frozen inside the bloc, using that money directly will be politically and legally risky for Brussels. In Belgium, where most of those assets are held, voiced strong concerns about potential retaliation and lawsuits. Despite the earlier opposition from Hungary's Prime Minister, EU leaders found a way for the plan to move forward, with Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic agreeing as long as the loan does not affect their national budgets. Moscow has responded sharply. Meanwhile, the Russian president has warned of severe consequences if Russian assets are ever handed over to Ukraine, calling such a move theft and a dangerous precedent. Meanwhile, in Britain, a separate but related battle over frozen Russian money is unfolding. The UK government has given the Russian oligarch a final deadline to release $3.4 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club to support Ukraine.
I can announce that we're issuing a licence to transfer £2.5 billion from the sale of Chelsea Football Club. That's been frozen, those funds, since 2022. My message to Abramovich is this: the clock is ticking. Honour the commitment that you made and pay up now. And if you don't, we're prepared to go to court so every penny reaches those whose lives have been torn apart by Putin's illegal war.
The funds have been frozen since 2022, with London insisting that they should go to humanitarian aid inside Ukraine, while Abramovich argues that they should help all victims of the war, including in Russia. And these developments underscoring the same message. Europe is committing billions to support Ukraine, but for now, Russian assets remain frozen, locked in legal and political limbo as the war drags on. Shifting focus now, Europe continuing to arm itself up for war against Russia, and in the latest, EU lawmakers have backed a bill for what is being referred to as a military Schengen area. That would basically eliminate the bloc's internal borders for the purposes of rapid troop and material movements. Let's break this down for you. In the event of a conflict with Russia, in fact, top EU officials have already used claims of an alleged threat from Russia to justify huge military spending packages like its massive $800 billion or $938 billion one Rearm Europe plan. Of course, Russia has labeled European fears and claims of war as nonsense, but the continued war in Ukraine has done little to actually change the European mindset. The proposal was originally presented by the European Commission last month. It reportedly envisions establishing an EU-wide military mobility zone by 2027 with the aim of cutting through the bloc's bureaucracy and reducing the time different militaries would actually need to cross the borders. With the non-binding resolution passed, lawmakers on the bloc's transport and defense committees are now set to work on the bill. The lawmakers also passed a proposal to allocate 17 billion from 2028 to 2034 to military mobility and dealing with long-term logistics as well as infrastructure issues like bridges and tunnels unsuited for use by heavy vehicles like tanks. Upgrading such hotspots would cost at least an additional 100 billion. This is part of a broader campaign in Europe with member countries accelerating their militarization, freeing up 335 billion in pandemic relief funds and mobilizing 150 billion in loans and grants for the bloc's military-industrial complex. Some of these funds have been made available to Ukraine. The militarization push has been accompanied by increasingly aggressive statements from officials. Take the example of France's top general, who warned French citizens last month to be ready to lose children in a potential conflict with Russia. Also, a number of countries expanding and reworking their conscription rules. Meanwhile, Russia continues to dismiss European fears. On Thursday, the Russian president warned that Europeans are, quote-unquote, indoctrinated with fears of an inevitable confrontation with Russia. He is saying that they are being fed a lie about an imaginary Russian threat. The European Union has postponed the signing of its long-awaited free trade agreement with the South American bloc, pushing the decision to next month amid the growing public and political pressure. The European Commission confirmed the delay after France and Italy raised last-minute objections, threatening to derail the deal just days before its planned signing. The European Commission president had been scheduled to travel to Brazil to formalize the agreement, but failed to secure the broad backing required from the EU member states. Listen to this.
This evening we have achieved a breakthrough to pave the way for a successful completion of the Mercosur agreement in January. We need a few extra weeks to address some issues with member states, and we have reached out to our Mercosur partners and agreed to postpone slightly the signature.
And the French president demanded further concessions and called for additional discussions in January, citing the mounting challenges faced by the European farmers. Macron has said he coordinated with the leaders from Italy, Poland, Belgium, Austria, Ireland and others to press for postponement, warning that the deal could overwhelm Europe's agricultural sector. The political standoff unfolded as thousands of farmers took to the streets in Brussels, converging near the European Parliament and the EU headquarters during a leaders' summit. Protesters arrived in tractors, blocked key roads, blared horns and set off fireworks. Police responded with water cannons and tear gas as the clashes intensified. Demonstrators hurled vegetables, stones, smoke bombs, fireworks at buildings, while some tractors uprooted trees in public squares. Authorities used tear gas to regain control as the violence escalated. Damage remained visible around the European Parliament today, with broken barriers, torn up paving stones, debris scattered as the cleanup crews moved in. The disputed agreement targets trade between the EU and the founding members of the other bloc, Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, negotiations of which started more than 20 years ago. And the EU lawmakers voted to advance the deal on Tuesday by adding some safeguards and concessions for the European farmers. Supporters argue the pact would boost EU exports of cars, machinery and alcohol, while cutting the reliance on China and offsetting US tariffs. Critics, led by France and Italy, warning that cheaper South American farm imports could devastate European agriculture. The deal is expected to impact around 780 million people in both the EU and the countries of the other bloc. But for now, Europe's biggest trade gamble remains on hold. A quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. The space race is intensifying between the United States and China. We are telling you all about the latest moves. You don't want to miss this. Why is Donald Trump easing marijuana rules? We are telling you about the reactions and the divisions. Also, why is the South Korean president urging public health cover for hair loss? Before you start scratching your head wondering why, we are getting you the answer in just a bit. All this and more coming up. Delhi continues to witness bad air, and the Parliament has adjourned without any debate on the pollution crisis. The political flashpoint came when the opposition started protesting over a bill to rebrand a rural employment scheme. Removing Mahatma Gandhi's name, this led to disruption. The chair declared the House non-congenial and the Parliament adjourned. What about the pollution debate? Seems to have been blown away. What followed was a full-blown blame game, though, the government saying it was ready for a full-day discussion, accusing the Congress of disrupting the proceedings.
Forms express बहुत तेजी से आगे.
We wanted a discussion on pollution. The opposition had requested it. But the Congress then said that pollution is not important and created a ruckus. This one regret remains. We were ready for a full-day discussion on pollution. The Congress party, by further instigating and provoking other parties, created chaos and disruption by storming into the well of the House.
भारत को विकसित राष्ट्र बनाने के लिए.
The Congress fired back, calling it a pollution session, and claimed the government is downplaying the health impact of dirty air. Listen to this.
जो एक औपचारिकता है.
This wasn't a winter session, it was a pollution session. I was shocked when the government gave a reply in Parliament yesterday stating that there is no relation between pollution and lung problems. The government statement that the discussion on pollution couldn't happen because of Congress is false. I refute it entirely.
और उस सर्वदलीय बैठक में
Delhi has been grappling with toxic air. New data showing that in the first 8 days of December, Delhi's average AQI stood at 343, the worst for this period since 2018, putting millions at serious health risk. And yet the House that was meant to debate this crisis did not really witness that discussion. While smog does not pause for protests, who is accountable is the immediate question. Are the states to be blamed for poor implementation? Are the local bodies to be blamed for unchecked construction? All of them collectively, is it, for failing millions of citizens? This is not just Delhi's problem anymore. This is India's pollution map. Let's just break this down for you. Delhi's AQI standing at 374, Noida 410, Ghaziabad 358, Gurugram 322, Jaipur 178, Chandigarh 254, Kolkata 160, Mumbai 130, Bengaluru 118, Hyderabad 88. This, of course, is not a crisis limited to just one part. Accountability cannot be adjourned clearly, and the citizens want the solutions to appear. The damage is not temporary. The cost is being paid with just about every breath. Our next story is from India as well, where the Allahabad High Court has directed police protection for 12 live-in couples who said they faced threats from their families and had received inadequate security from the police. Let's just break this down for you. Justice Vivek Kumar Singh gave the direction, observing that adults in a live-in relationship are entitled to protection of life and personal liberty from the state. Here's more context. Basically, the court noted that a large number of similar cases are now being filed, with couples stating that they had approached district police but to no avail, prompting them to move the court. And on the question of whether the absence of formal marriage affects constitutional protection, the court held the right to human life is to be treated on a much higher pedestal, regardless of a citizen being minor or major, married or unmarried. The mere fact that the petitioners have not solemnized marriage would not deprive them of their fundamental rights as envisaged in the Constitution of India, being citizens of India. The court clarified that the question at hand was whether the Constitution protects adults who enter into live-in relationships rather than whether the society accepts such relationships. It noted that while morality may vary between social and individual perspectives, legality is unaffected by these differences. The ruling stated that live-in relationships are not prohibited by law, despite the fact that many segments of the Indian society may still find them uncomfortable. The court said that once an individual attains the age of majority, that person is legally free to decide where and with whom to live. It added, once an individual who is a major has chosen his or her partner, it is not for any other person, be it a family member, to object and cause a hindrance to their peaceful existence. It is the bounden duty of the state, as per the constitutional obligations casted upon it, to protect the life and liberty of every citizen. Not just that, the court also addressed earlier High Court decisions that refused protection to live-in couples. The judge said that the present cases involved adults who had not committed any offense and that there was no legal basis to deny their request. The bench added that it was unable to adopt those earlier views because they were not in line with the Supreme Court rulings. The court allowed all 12 petitions and issued detailed instructions on how the police should respond if the couples face threats in the future. Moving on, US President Donald Trump has now taken a major step towards softening America's federal marijuana laws. He signed an executive order, in fact, that could begin to undo decades of tough on drugs policy there. The move could reshape how the federal government treats marijuana, and it is already sparking sharp political pushback. The order directs the Attorney General to move as quickly as possible to reclassify marijuana under US law. If the process is completed, marijuana would no longer sit in the most restrictive category of controlled substances. Instead, it would be treated as a less dangerous drug and placed alongside substances like certain painkillers and other medicines that have accepted medical uses.
We have people begging for me to do this, people that are in great pain. For decades, this action has been requested by American patients suffering from extreme pain, incurable diseases, aggressive cancers, seizure disorders, neurological problems, and more, including numerous veterans with service-related injuries and older Americans who live with chronic medical problems that severely degrade their quality of life.
So that's what Donald Trump has said. Now, for supporters, this is a long overdue change, and they are arguing that the current classification does not reflect reality in a country where marijuana is widely used and legal in some form in many states. Federal data showing nearly 1 in 5 Americans using marijuana each year, even as millions have been arrested for possession over the past several decades. But the decision has exposed deep divisions in Washington, including within Trump's own party. Dozens of GOP lawmakers in both the House and the Senate urged the president not to sign the order. They are warning that reclassifying marijuana could downplay health risks and send out the wrong message, especially to the young people. The House Republicans, led by the Texas Congressman Pete Sessions and House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris, have called on Trump to keep marijuana as a Schedule 1 drug. To put it into perspective, this category is reserved for substances like heroin and ecstasy, which are considered highly addictive with no accepted medical value. In the Senate, lawmakers, including Nebraska's Pete Ricketts, have also voiced strong opposition. The issue now shifts to the Drug Enforcement Administration, which must complete a formal review before any reclassification takes effect. And that process has been slow, bogged down in bureaucracy, and any actual change could still take months. The announcement also sent out shockwaves through financial markets, in fact. Cannabis stocks jumped at first and then fell back sharply when it became clear that the order did not include changes to the federal banking rules. For now, Trump's move signaling a significant shift in tone from the White House as far as marijuana is concerned. But as that political fight intensifies and regulators step in, the future of the federal cannabis policy remains uncertain and also deeply divisive. The moon is back in the crosshairs of global power dynamics. Donald Trump has sparked the new space race with a nuclear angle. This time, China and Russia are already on the launch pad. Take a look.
America strikes back at the moon. President Trump has turbocharged NASA's blueprint, vowing a 2028 crewed return and permanent lunar outpost elements by 2030, all fueled by cutting-edge nuclear reactors on the surface and in orbit. On Trump's wish list is a lunar surface reactor primed for launch by 2030, delivering megawatts of power to sustain humanity's foothold beyond Earth. This isn't exploration, it's domination. The White House describes it as a new age of American space achievement. Billions in fresh funding pour into Artemis accelerators, private partnerships, and nuclear tech to eclipse rivals. Trump frames it as reclaiming US supremacy, with lunar mining for rare resources and a springboard to Mars. But the clock ticks fast. China has already announced that it is building a nuclear plant on the moon to power the International Lunar Research Station. Beijing is doing this in collaboration with Moscow. Russia and China aren't waiting. Their joint lunar nuclear power station project races forward, aiming to beam energy across the moon's south pole, by decade's end, a direct challenge to US plans. Beijing's secretive reactors and Moscow's reactor expertise could lock down key water ice deposits first. NASA warns of a lunar land grab where nuclear power decides who controls the high ground. Trump's message is clear: the United States will not arrive second. Beyond science, the moon is now viewed as high ground, a platform for navigation, communications, resource extraction, and strategic leverage. Permanent human presence on moon are no longer science fiction talking points, they are planning documents. As rockets are redesigned and reactors miniaturized, one truth is emerging fast. Space is no longer a quiet frontier, it is a competitive arena, and the next great race won't be decided by who gets there first, but by who can stay.
The Pope on Friday named Bishop Richard Morphed as the new Archbishop of Westminster, the most prominent Catholic figure in England and Wales. Morphed will replace Cardinal Vincent Nichols, who held the post for 16 years and who turned 80, the mandatory retirement age for Catholic bishops in November. The 67-year-old was born in Zambia but moved to England at an early age. His profile on the website of the Diocese of Arundel and Brighton in South England, where he has been a bishop, stating that he has previously served as the Bishop of the Armed Forces and has been outspoken on the running of prisons. In a statement, he said, and I'm quoting, "I am moved greatly by the trust that the Pope has placed in me. I look forward to continuing the great adventure that is the life of the Church and witness to the gospel." The appointment coming a day after the Vatican shook up the leadership of the US Church. Morphed takes the helm as Catholicism is gaining ground, especially among the younger worshippers. According to a Bible Society YouGov report this year, Catholics now outnumber Anglicans among churchgoers between the ages of 18 to 34 in England and Wales, with 41% identifying as Catholic compared with 20% who say they are Anglican, reversing 2018 levels. In fact, the appointment also comes amid warming ties between Rome and London, marked by King Charles and Pope praying together in the Vatican Sistine Chapel this year, in the first joint worship by an English monarch and a Catholic pontiff in nearly 5 centuries. The announcement also follows the Church of England's naming of Sarah Mullally as its first female Archbishop of Canterbury in October. Remember, the Catholic Church has an all-male clergy. The US Justice Department has reached a mandatory deadline to release a vast collection of records linked to investigations into the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein by Friday. The US Congress has imposed that requirement last month, remember, after lawmakers passed a disclosure law by an overwhelming majority, effectively forcing the Trump administration to open the files. Lawmakers moved ahead after prolonged political battles and rising criticism, including backlash from some of Trump's own supporters over the administration's hesitation to disclose the material. And even as time runs out, Democrats in the Congress have released new evidence themselves. They have published 68 previously unseen images recovered from Epstein's estate, reportedly. The material includes copies of passports and identification cards from multiple countries, including Russia, Ukraine, Morocco, Italy, South Africa, the Czech Republic, reportedly, also Lithuania and the UK. Several images have blurred faces and redacted details, reportedly, to protect the identities. Other photographs show Epstein seated with public intellectual Noam Chomsky on what appears to be an aircraft, reportedly. Separate images showing Microsoft co-founder posing beside a woman whose face is obscured, former Trump strategist also appearing in the newly released batch, reportedly. Democrats stressing that the images do not show illegal conduct by the individuals pictured. They say the release aims to increase transparency around Epstein's contacts and movements. And some of the images released are deeply disturbing. They include close-ups of text from Vladimir Nabokov's novel Lolita, written across a woman's body, and a screenshot of a late-night text exchange that appears to discuss sending young women to a person identified only as J for $1,000 each. A cosmic enigma pulsing across the skies tonight. A comet that many say is powered by alien tech is moving to a mysterious heartbeat. It's now touching our planet's cosmic doorstep, it seems. And scientists say its rhythm has changed exactly as it gets the closest to us. Here's what's happening.
It arrived quietly, cold, ancient, and utterly unknown. The interstellar object known as 3I Atlas has traveled millions of kilometers through deep space, slipping into our solar system like an uninvited guest. Now, as it sweeps past Earth at its closest approach, it is doing something that has left astronomers unsettled. Its internal heartbeat is changing. Telescopes tracking the object have detected a strange repeating signal, a pulsing pattern. A steady cycle lasting 16.16 hours. That rhythm, scientists say, appears to shift subtly as the comet interacts with sunlight. Solar wind and Earth's gravity. Stranger still, the cycle aligns uncannily with Earth's 24-hour day. Researchers believe the pulse may be caused by jets of gas erupting from the comet's surface as it spins. Ice, heated for the first time in billions of years, erupts into space. The object brightens, then dims, over and over again, like breathing, like a heartbeat. 3I Atlas is not only the third known interstellar visitor ever observed after Oumuamua and 2I Borisov, but unlike them, this object is glowing green and behaving unpredictably as it nears the sun. NASA insists there is no evidence of alien technology. No message hidden in the pulse. Scientists are clear on that, but the timing, the rhythm, and the changes unfolding in real time have made this one of the most closely watched cosmic encounters in history. As it speeds past Earth at tens of kilometers per second, instruments across the world are racing to capture every flicker, every surge, every beat. Soon, 3i Atlas will fade back into the darkness between the stars, never to return. But for one brief moment, an object born in another solar system is dancing to a rhythm we can see and cannot yet fully explain. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
New research is raising serious concerns about the environmental cost of AI, and a study is warning that AI systems running inside data centers in Silicon Valley could release more carbon dioxide this year than many small countries. The study appears in the peer-reviewed journal Patterns and comes from a data scientist. In fact, a research estimating that electricity used by AI could produce between 33 million and 80 million metric tons of carbon emissions. At the high end, that figure is higher than last year's emissions from Chile, Romania, even New York City. The study also flags major uncertainty, the scientists saying AI companies do not share enough data, making precise estimates difficult. The research also looks beyond carbon, in fact. It estimates AI's water use in 2025 standing at between 312 billion and 767 billion liters. That number could exceed the 46 billion liters of bottled water consumed globally each year. And the author says water data is even harder to track because companies keep details secret. He further warns that AI power demand is nearing the level of a country like the UK, but the real environmental impact remains unclear without transparency. AI's growth has pushed massive expansion of data centers. In fact, this has increased electricity demand, driven up the local power costs, and also intensified pressure on water supplies used for cooling. Much of that water reportedly evaporates and does not return to the ecosystem. And these concerns have sparked backlash. More than 230 environmental groups in America reportedly urged the US Congress to pause new data center projects. The study builds on earlier findings showing AI electricity demand rising from 9.4 gigawatts in late 2024 to a possible 23 gigawatts by the end of 2025. The author cautions that pollution levels vary widely and public data remains limited. Does the receding hairline bother you? Are you concerned about hair loss? Are you concerned about the treatment costs? South Korea is now making a move. It's a rather bizarre intervention, in fact. It has unveiled a rather unorthodox measure to benefit close to 10 million people. The South Korean president has announced that hair loss treatments are soon likely to be covered under the country's national health insurance scheme. And he claimed that baldness has become a matter of survival rather than a cosmetic concern for young people. The leader justified the move, citing a severe sense of alienation among young people who feel that they do not receive the benefits despite paying insurance premiums. Focus on high beauty standards has long been ingrained in South Korea's culture, with baldness being perceived as a stigma in a way. In a 2024 online survey, 98% of the respondents opined that being attractive brought social benefits. According to the local authorities, 240,000 people visited hospitals last year to treat hair loss, out of which 40% belong to the 20 to 40 age group. Now, here's why hair loss is such a big issue in the context of South Korea. As per estimates, 1 in every 5 persons in the country experiences hair loss. The hair loss treatment market has been estimated at $400 million in 2025, up from $245 million in 2020. And it's worth noting that South Korea has a universal health insurance scheme, which is funded by premiums calculated on the basis of a person's income. At present, insurance coverage extends only to the treatment of hair loss due to medical reasons. The South Korean president's proposal comes even as this insurance scheme incurred a record deficit of $7.7 billion last year. The country's health minister, meanwhile, also conceded that the premium cost will go up if this proposal is approved. He also noted that the expanded coverage requires a comprehensive analysis, and the proposal has sparked a row, with medical professionals expressing skepticism. In a statement, the Korean Medical Association has stressed that prioritizing coverage for cancer and other serious diseases aligns better with the principles of health insurance as opposed to funding hair loss treatment. The main opposition, People Power Party, has also condemned the proposal, the party spokesperson asserting that the national health insurance system is meant to safeguard treatment only for diseases that directly threaten life. Incidentally, this was a key poll promise of the South Korean president. Now, the onus is on the leader to fulfill his commitment this time. A British baker has found himself in the middle of a full-blown social media controversy after his blunt comments about Mexican bread touched a nerve, sparking outrage, memes, a broader debate about culture, identity. Let's tell you more about this. Richard Hart, a well-known figure in the international baking world and co-founder of Mexico City's bakery, is now apologizing for remarks that he made in a food podcast that recently resurfaced online. In that clip, he claimed that Mexicans, quoting, don't really have much of a bread culture, dismissing common sandwich rolls as, quoting further, white, ugly, and industrially made, quote unquote. Now, those comments spread rapidly across social media, inviting reactions. In fact, the anger was also swift in some cases. Many Mexicans called the remarks dismissive and out of touch, saying they undermined a food tradition that is deeply rooted in everyday life there. What started out as a culinary critique quickly turned into a national conversation and a debate about who gets to define Mexican food and who does not. From the beloved sauce used there to the sweet shell-shaped food items, social media filled up with defenses of Mexican breads. For Mexican, they are not just breads, they are daily rituals and a source of national pride. The controversy also struck a deeper chord in Mexico City, where tensions have been escalating over the influx of foreign chefs, entrepreneurs and tourists. For some, those comments also reflected a broader frustration that foreigners often receive outsized praise and influence, while the local traditions are criticized or even get overshadowed. Historians noting that while wheat bread arrived in Mexico during the colonial era, it later evolved into a distinctly Mexican tradition, blending European techniques with local flavors and customs. Today, small family-run bakeries remain a cornerstone of daily life, serving not just food, but a sense of belonging. Faced with the backlash, Hart has since issued a public apology, but the debate has also continued, revealing how just a few words about bread can quickly become a major flashpoint. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gampi, signing off. Thanks for watching. Have a good weekend.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. coming soon to challenge perceptions in RS's centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
This week on the West Asia Post, Hamas is weakened but still in control. A ceasefire after 2 years of war with Israel is allowing the group to rebuild. Nuclear rhetoric between Israel and Iran is heating up. Israel says it has a duty to stop Iran from reviving its nuclear program. And in Yemen, the Houthi movement is stepping up military preparations, fueling fears of a clash with Southern Transitional Council forces.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION. World is One.
As cinephiles reel from the shocking death of filmmaker Rob Reiner, we look at the cinema icon's rich legacy. Soak in the holiday spirit with our list of Christmas movies. And know all about the defining K-pop moments of 2025. All this and much more with me, Diksha Bisla, on WION at these times.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RS's centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
A 2025 love story. Create an AI persona. Fall head over heels. Get married. Adopt an AI pet. Call it Mofflin. Robots on the football field and sparring in a ring. What a year it's been for humanity's tryst with tech. We are hooked to ChatGPT and Gemini. With some help from these gents, Time's calling them the architects of AI. Don't miss the very last episode of Tech It Out in 2025, only on WION at these times.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One. My name is Mohammed Saleh, and let's start this broadcast by taking a quick look at what is making headlines at this hour. At least about 3 people have been killed after a knife-wielding man went on a rampage in Taiwan's capital, Taipei. The attacker later died while trying to escape from the police.